Hey, my name's shawnshawn. I sell art on shawnshawn.co. Today we're going to react to Sorastro's painting. So Sorastro is a modeler painter, so more kind of your craftsman style painting, but he does it on a next level, I would say. I mean, I've done model paintings when I was growing up. It was my first really love of painting, was painting toy ships and battleships and cars and all this kind of stuff. But we were just painting them like red, blue, green. I mean, nothing that creative. But this guy's on the next level, so let's check it out. This first one is one of his more popular ones, Star Wars Imperial assault painting. So Star Wars theme obviously is going to be very popular. Let's check it out. Ooh, Star Wars. So a really strong intro. He just has like several different versions of what he's going to show you to paint, and he has them going on the line, different pans, up and down, zoom in, and then this nice dramatic start. So a really great hook to start the video, I think. Has a feel of totally Star Wars.
Welcome to episode 1 of Sorastro's Star Wars painting series.
So he has this nice detail shot of the paintbrushes and the paint that's really strong as well.
In these tutorials, we will be painting figures from Fantasy Flight's Star Wars Imperial Assault miniatures game.
Ooh.
Beginning in this episode with the Stormtroopers.
Yes.
We'll be painting our Stormtroopers using the following steps. We're going to prime the figures white using a spray-on primer. Paint all of the black areas with a dark grey. Apply a black wash to the entire miniature.
Ooh.
Then shade all of the white areas in layers before adding some battle damage and varnish.
Ooh.
Before we begin, it's worth mentioning firstly that these tutorials are aimed at the beginner painter. Although we aren't going to win any painting competitions, I hope to show that with the right equipment and a little patience, anyone can produce results that look great.
And a great use of the zoom lens, where it's kind of like a little bit, he has a narrow depth of field, so there's like, the focus is just on the foreground, is blurred out in the background, so a very nice cinematic effect here.
Secondly, I happen to be using paints by Citadel, but alternatives include ranges by Vallejo, Reaper, and Army.
Okay, let's
Painter,
skip ahead just a little bit.
that will do the job just as well. The main thing we want to achieve is thorough coverage without any loss of detail through overspraying.
So great focus in and out.
Once the spray is dry, it's a good idea to mount your figure onto a cork or bottle top of some kind to avoid handling the miniature directly whilst painting, as such handling can wear off the paint before we have a chance to seal it with varnish.
That's right. Whoa!
Now we paint all of the black areas of the figure using a dark grey, remembering to thin the paint a little with a few drops of water.
Yeah, to get the fine detail, you need to thin it up. Very nice thin brush.
We're going to paint the gloves, gun, and larger gaps between the armour, as well as the visor, and not forgetting the horizontal black strip that runs across the top of the helmet.
Ooh. It's interesting he's not using black, but he's using a grey.
The reason we're using grey is because the black wash we'll be adding in the next step will shade the recesses of these areas to give us a nice deep black, but allow the raised details to remain a shade lighter.
So let's go a little bit ahead here. It's a very good video though, from what I can see. It's very nice. Again, that depth of field is awesome, where everything's faded except for the figure. So you just focus completely on that Star Wars figure. I think it's a little off. It's a little more on his fingers versus the figure, but awesome. Very painstaking, you can see here. Great zoom shot. Let's go in a little bit more. Great dramatic film too. I love these transitions. They're awesome.
Once we're happy with the armor,
they're particularly scary.
Inspiration from some of the fantastic box art for the game by adding some battle damage and simple weathering. For the battle damage, some black with some dark brown, and roughly painting on some blaster marks. It's not a bad idea to use an old brush for this, as we'll be applying the paint in a fairly rough way.
Nice sound effects too. I think we got the gist of this video. Let's go on to the next one. Very well shot. I'm surprised because it's an older video and it's still shot at like a really high-end version. You're like, wow, it's pretty amazing. Lord of the Rings. Ooh. Another huge fan base, so awesome tie-in there using huge fan bases. super strong intro with the Lord of the Rings kind of lettering, font, style. You just kind of a gist of what he's going to paint. Again, he's using that depth of field where the center figure's in focus and everything else kind of blurs out. So again, you get that really tight focus. Really cool cinematic effects here.
Episode 12 of Sorastro's The Lord of the Rings painting series. In this episode, we're going to paint the giant spiders, cave trolls, and the nameless things.
And a really beautiful slow pan there.
Fantasy Flight Games The Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle-earth. To paint the monsters, I'm returning to some nice simple speed painting techniques, like those that were introduced back in the very first episode of the series.
So another thing he's doing that's really cool is he's using this very subtle zoom in, and it's a very slow zoom in, just a tiny bit. So it just gives it that little touch of motion, just a tiny bit. Very juicy from the video post-production.
The basis of the approach is that we apply thinned layers of colour over a zenithal pattern of light and shade. And this time I'll be using the Citadel contrast colours to help speed things along.
Another really cool thing is the background is completely blacked out, so you only see the game, you only see the figures. So the figures are the most brightest focus, and then you have this blacked out background. It's really cool. There's no other. So he hits the lighting just spot on in here, just top-down lighting, and you just don't see anything else. So it's really, really well shot, I'd say.
Here's a quick look at the painting stages. Before adding any colour, I've prepared the miniatures.
So here it's really cool as he's going to run you through the different steps, but the lettering he's using looks like Middle-earth lettering, right? So that's a really great little touch there to add in a little bit of coolness.
Exactly as described back in episode 1, which means firstly priming them in black, followed with some grey then white zenithal highlights applied from a halo above to achieve a nice easy pattern of light and shade. I've also then provided a white dry brush to further sharpen up the textures. This is a useful way to catch some of the details that might otherwise have been left black, such as we can see on the underside of the spiders. I've prepared all of the monsters in a box like this, and we'll be covering the remaining enemy type.
I mean, just like this, it looks really cool. Let's see what the next step is. Let's see, skip ahead a little bit.
Many of these creatures lack precise visual description in Tolkien's writing, so you should feel free to experiment with whatever colour schemes you like. You could also vary the colours of the individual monsters within each group. It's mainly in the interests of speed and uniformity that I chose to paint mine the same.
Also, I think it makes sense on a game standpoint if you're playing, like this is one type of monster and you have 6 of the same monster type, it makes sense to paint them all the same. So for gameplay, it makes sense to have that same color as well. Just if you're actually a game player, you don't want to have a green version, a purple one, and a green. You're like, oh, they have different powers. So that's a really good way to keep the consistent with the game, so you can actually use it as a game figure. He'd probably use them as a collecting item. I don't think he'd play with them, but it makes sense from that standpoint.
I'm now using the Margos purple to paint the frontal area of skin. You can see that this is a lot thinner and less concentrated compared to the Volupus pink. This means the tone will appear a fair bit lighter, and will be easier for me to tint with the Plague Bearer flesh in a moment.
Yeah, you can see that how he's done that white to gray to black on the first layer is really, he's just washing this so it has that great tonality without, it just has a lot of detail with the color there. Go a little bit further ahead here.
You can see that
He's doing the teeth. Ooh. I love the music that goes with this. It's so freaking awesome. It's really heightening the drama of the painting style.
Just dropping some additional contrast paint into the recesses between some of the teeth. And I've chosen to add a little black lining to the base of the claws.
Yeah, it just sharpens it up, just that little touch.
One more fun optional touch is to use some UHU glue to add some saliva. All I'm doing is stretching this between the teeth, and you could use whatever you like to do this, such as a cocktail stick.
Now that's a really cool effect. That's really kind of creepy. Like, man, where do you come up with this ideas to make it look like saliva? That's so awesome.
I'm now applying a little dark earth basing paste to what ground there is. Followed with a wash.
Alright, so we'll go into the next one. This is obviously another great video. This one is Monster Painting Guide, Episode 6, The Phoenix. Very great dramatic start here. So again, that really nice intro where you got the figurines zoomed in, you got the nice black background, so you only see the light on the figures. So it's very excellent as far as the lighting standpoint. It's like really high level cinematic lighting, and also that depth of field, so you got to focus only on the figure. This great overlay of text on here, so you know what you're going to see. So great hook to really get the viewer in.
Hello, and welcome to episode 6 of Sorastro's Kingdom Death Monster painting series.
So nice slow
In this episode, we're going to paint
movement
the
there
Phoenix from Adam Poot's Kingdom Death Monster.
Okay, let's skip ahead a little bit.
I'm now mixing some green stuff and using this to stick the resin pieces down. I like to use green stuff for this because it gives me time to arrange things to my liking, as it has quite a slow drying time. It can also be used to build up a little height, as I'm doing here.
Okay, so he's adding some little texture there. Let's go ahead a little bit. Base colors! Ah! I love these like transitions. It's awesome. So dramatic.
By dry brushing most of the model with some ivory, using some makeup brushes. I'm doing this to sharpen the texture, especially for the feathers, where I'll be applying some slightly thinned base tones in a moment.
Killer music in
I'm using
this.
a mostly downward motion so as to pick out the edges of the feathers that might naturally catch the most light.
Okay, again, great focus where it's just a little bit of depth of field where the focus is mostly on the figure, a little bit on his hands, obviously. But then you see the background of the drawing board is just fading out to soft focus, so that's a really nice touch there. So let's go on a little bit. This makes sense. So the cool thing is actually hand mixing all these different colors up versus just applying straight out of the thing. Most people just probably apply straight out of the tube.
And I then decided to introduce some of the abyssal blue, especially for the more shadowed areas.
It's a really amazing.
For the bones on the base, we could use pretty much any kind of ochre or cream, perhaps desaturated with a little.
It's really cool mixing
of blue.
You know, the tonality and the colors. You're like, well, he's just painting sculpture, but this guy's taking it to the next level. It's so cool. So great detail again. Good zoom shot. Let's scroll a little bit. Ooh, the water is really cool. I think he's using resin maybe there to make it look watery. Just really amazing effects there, though.
I'm now returning to the skin, and I'm going to create a 2-to-1 mix of Agrax Earthshade and Druchii Violet, thinned with an equal amount of Larmian medium. I'm then using this to shade the more textured and recessed parts of the body, such as the hands, face, and the circular growths.
It's amazing. Capturing that texture, or heightening the texture is really amazing there. You can use this in traditional painting too, if you have kind of a texture and a paste, and you kind of let that paint pool in those crevices, you're going to get this similar effect in painting, especially also with crackulature.
This could also be used for the tiny hands, as well as the beard and moustache.
Skip ahead a little bit. Obviously, it's like a 50-minute video, so we're just kind of
texture.
So just a little bit of highlights. You can also use this in painting. You know, just a little bit of highlights here and there is going to make it really pop. Same principles apply in, you know, traditional 2D painting. I've also chosen to draw some
capillaries onto the head with the skin shadow tone.
See, this is like over the top where you're just adding veins. Like, who would think to add veins in the monster? Another really cool thing you can see, well, I don't know if it's cool, but he's just like wiping the brush on his hand, but it's helping him probably maintain the different colors. Like, oh, well, this color came from this and added here. It might help him keep track of what is on the monster's head, so he kind of knows what he wants to match there. It might also just be he's lazy to go find something to wipe it off on, but I think maybe he's using it as a kind of a guide. Or maybe not. It looks like he's just wiping it off.
You can then glaze some of the skin highlight tone on top to give the capillaries a subdermal appearance.
He's definitely using his hand like an easel, though. That's interesting. I think it's because he's just holding it, so he can't really go off, maybe, or he just wants to keep the focus there. I don't know. I would just have paper towels and wipe it there. But
the other remaining areas of skin.
Let's go to close to the end here. It's amazing variety in the texture, like just that subtle layering, and you can use these techniques in 2D painting, obviously, to get your base color down, and then do that subtle detail on top in a slightly different tonality. You're going to get that really pop in the color. It's a really great painting technique that you can use in 2D art. Also, if you got any texture in your painting, you can obviously do that. Great music, great depth of field here. So yeah, I think I'll leave it there. I'm definitely impressed with, he's using these high quality figurines, very smart tie into the fan base. He's using Star Wars, Lord of the Rings. This is probably some fantasy figure, but all those tie in with all those huge fan bases. You're going to have Star Wars fans love this, Lord of the Rings fans love it. You might have a little bit of debate there. He's focusing mostly on painting tutorials of these 3D characters. So model painting basically. I started out as a modeler painter, so it's really cool, but I never got to this level because I never thought to add this level of detail. I think my dad probably is more into it because he does a lot of railroading. Although railroading you do tend to make it kind of, you paint it new and then you kind of age it, so to say, with the paint. And so my dad does a little bit of that, so it's really cool. And you have to love this really tiny detail that he's doing. But just amazing effects. He knows all the materials as well. It's not just the paint. He's using like this spittle material to get the teeth material and the claws. He's figuring out how to do water with probably a resin material. I missed that part exactly, but he's probably using resin there. And just, he's figuring out how to do skin texture, bone texture, veins, kind of brains, the texture on the floor, and just all that great tonality in the painting is just amazing from just bringing these really figurines, which are kind of just a little bit lifeless when they're just straight white, and then he just add the color, but just in such a great way where it just heightens the impact of this so well. Obviously, you could probably work on a studio if they do this kind of traditional 3D characters. They might use a guy like this on a set like that. But yeah, it's really interesting videos, really extremely well put together. And I was so surprised. The first video from Star Wars is like from 11 years ago. You'd figure it'd be total crap with, granularity, but he must have filmed it probably 1080 at the time, but it's just a really high quality video. And I'm just so surprised because it's an old video. And normally the older videos, I know mine I shot on iPhone 4. I didn't have any idea what I was doing, but maybe he came from the cinema world, and so he probably knew a lot of the video techniques. I'm not sure, but just really high level, great detail, great figurines, obviously, but he's just really taken to the next level. So I'd encourage it. It's Sorastro. Hopefully you guys like it. Give me a thumbs up. If you'd like to subscribe, you can subscribe below, and hope to see you on the next Artist React video. Thanks for watching, guys.